What's up, you guys? Welcome to another episode of the Off-Market Operator. Ruud-Johnson, I am your host. Today is another one of our rare guest features, you guys. We make sure we bring on incredible guests. My guest today, we recorded this live on my boat here in San Diego. We went over everything from his backstory to his entrepreneurial journey to how he got into real estate, the kind of real estate he buys, why he buys it, and how that has an impact on his life and his students' life. So I also dropped at the end of this video, guys, how you can get in contact with him. Make sure you do. He is the real deal.
People don't fail at real estate because they suck. They fail because there's too many ways to succeed. That's why I suggest you focus on the most important skill in all of real estate, which is finding deals. I'm Ruud-Johnson, and in this podcast, I share the exact steps I've used to source 400 deals by age 24. This will allow you to do three things: control your deal flow, make unlimited income, and build your empire as an off-market operator.
Welcome in to the Off-Market Operator Show. I very rarely do live shows, only with people I like and that I've vetted. I know we have a lot of mutuals, so I know you're legit. A lot of guys that sell courses online, Twitter, Instagram, everywhere. There's not a ton behind that, but I know I've verified through several people that you do. What you talk about is legit. So we're sitting here in San Diego on my boat on a beautiful day after a couple months of shit weather, and we're gonna get into it, man. So thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I want to take it all back, man, all the way back to kind of what I like to frame shows is going back to childhood, middle school, high school. Was there a moment when you were in middle school, high school, however young that you were, where you said, where society is directing my life through school, through sitting in a classroom 9 to 5 every single day, that's not for me? Do you have a vivid, most people I find, they do have a memory, middle school, high school, where they go, this is just not for me. Do you have a core memory like that?
Yeah, I don't know if there's necessarily a core memory of me recognizing that young that I didn't want to be a part of the 9 to 5, because I don't, to be quite frank with you, I don't think I even understood what a 9 to 5 was. I just knew that I had this entrepreneurial thing. Everybody around me said it, and I knew that I had it. As early as burning CDs and burning DVDs that I was like torrenting when I was like in elementary school.
Yep.
To, at school, the pizza that they were selling was $2.50 a slice. I would have my mom take her lunch break, bring 5-6 Little Caesars pizzas we sell for $1 a slice, and I'd come back home with like $30-$50. In middle school, I was already doing eBay, essentially what was like drop shipping back then, but I was kind of doing it from my house. I was ordering Chinese wholesale life-proof iPhone cases,
Alibaba?
from Alibaba. Yeah. I had these packs coming in, and I'd box it up, sell it, buy it for 10, sell it for 80, and was making tens of thousands of dollars. And this is like in middle school. Over time, I had a lot of failed ventures, but I was always thinking and knowing deep down that I was meant for this entrepreneur life. I was also spending a lot of time online researching and figuring out what other people were doing. I just loved money, the concept of making money, what it can do for you. I didn't grow up wealthy.
At a young age?
Very young.
And was that sparked by your family not having money? Was it sparked by you just saying, hey, there's some cars and stuff that I want to have? Or was it sparked by you just love the game of selling stuff?
Never. I look back, I think about this a lot. My mom worked at Costco for 25, 30 years. My dad worked in the prison system, and so we were just a typical like middle class family. I grew up in Visalia, California. There's literally not too much going on except for cows, farms, and dairies. And I felt different in a good way. I wasn't driven by, oh, we don't have this, I really want this. Like I grew up thinking that, once a year eating at Olive Garden was fire. You know what I mean? So this is like, the breadsticks, unlimited, you know what I mean? Or like, I remember seeing one very core memory is seeing $100 on the bill and my mom kind of like covering it up and being like, no, and kind of looking stressed out at my dad. So, I do remember little bits and pieces like that, but the bottom line is I'm in it for the game, right? Like I was in it for the game back then, and maybe I didn't recognize it, but now as I'm in the position I'm in now, I heard this quote from Alex Ramosi. He said, I've been to the top of the mountain and there's nothing there. And it's true. Like I've gone from zero to making tens of millions of dollars, and these things that I thought maybe that I wanted, like the cars or the houses or the this and the that, it's not what it's about. It's about the game. It's about the love for the game. And you and I are both very similar people that we're addicted to the game. We want to win. And so there's always going to be a new level. There's always going to be I have a house, he has a mansion, I want the mansion.
Yep.
I have the mansion, he has the yacht, I want the yacht.
Yep.
But all those are just trophies along this, game. And so I try and stay grounded in that. I try and bring myself back to reality a little bit. But at the end of the day, I'm a gamer, I'm a lifer.
I love it, man. Yeah, I mean, I think everyone can look back at moments in their life and kind of dissect how that's framed their view of money and other things. When you were growing up, man, because I have for me, my parents, we were middle class for sure, but the way money was conceptualized to me was a lot of the time is we don't have the money for that, or we're not like that family. We were well off, we traveled, we did stuff, but we can't do that. You can't do this thing because of money. Was that how money was conceptualized to you? If it was a limiting factor? Because I find a lot of people that are highly driven internally, like yourself, money was a constraint for so long in their life that most of what it's about is the fear of never having to go back to that place again.
Yeah.
Is that what drives you from your childhood, or is it more, is there something else now that you've pivoted to that keeps you going?
There's two points there. I operate out of fear. And I used to operate out of anger a lot.
Yep.
Like I'd have bad things go wrong in business, and I didn't even care how much money I made. I just wanted to bury my competition or bury the old partner or whatever.
Yep.
But I do operate out of fear because I know what it's like to be living on couches. I know what it's like to have to steal food from my restaurant that I was working at. I know what it's like, and it sucks. So I've positioned myself now to where I've invested damn near every single dollar that I have outside of, maybe a car or two or, a couple other extracurriculars and trips, every dollar I have into real estate so that I have this guaranteed amount of passive income that's coming in every single month. And it creates safety for me.
Yep.
It's the way that I sleep better at night. I flow through life and my energy is on a completely different wavelength because I know that there's a point of security that, okay, if shit hits the fan, if XYZ happens, if my mom gets cancer, if my brother gets whatever it happens, I help pay through college for the rest of my family. This is all because I have this nest egg of real estate that I can lean back on. So it's completely changed my life. But to go back to one of the questions that you asked earlier, because you made a good point. In my household growing up, time equaled money, right? Like you traded time for money. So for me, growing up, time, money equal time equals money. This is a funny story because the other day I got stuck at an airport in Houston, and I had to wait 8 hours to get home, or I could deboard the plane, pay an extra $400 and get home in the next hour. I do that. I pay it. And so the cool thing about my business and how I've structured everything is my family is fully involved in my business. I retired both of my parents and now they work for me. So my mom does my bookkeeping. So she sees this thing pop up on the Amex app and she's like, $450? You know how hard I have to work for you know how many hours I have to work for $450? You already had a $400 airplane ticket, blah, blah, blah. I go, Mom, look, what's the point of having any of this money? And what's the point of any of this if I can't buy back my time? Because time is now my most important asset, right? That's
money, man. Yeah, that must be interesting too with the mom as a bookkeeper. Stuff pops up like, what is this?
Yeah. What's Tootsie's?
Yeah.
She's all, you spent $1,000
There's a lot.
at a cabaret. What the heck?
Yeah, there's a lot.
Is this a cabinet store?
I love that, man. So I think that's kind of early. Like going into high school, man. What were you like in high school? Were you playing sports, or were you more kind of on your own? Were you for me in high school? I'll give you an example. Like I was an athlete, but I always felt like when I went to parties and went out, and I felt like I wasn't progressing. And for me personally, if I don't feel like I'm progressing, I do not feel good psychologically myself at all. If I go a day or 2 or 3 days without having some kind of moving the needle forward thing in my life, I feel terrible. And sports was my outlet for that. And now it's business. But I remember, no matter how fun it was, I'd go out in high school, go out in college, I always had that thing in my head, brain, like this isn't leading me anywhere. But did you have that same thing, or did that kind of hit you later, or what was your take in high school on? Did you feel a little different?
Yeah. So one thing that I've always been able to do like really well is live in the moment and be present. And so it doesn't like if I spent 2 or 3 days or a week at the lake, it doesn't affect me. Like I'm not like I miss my business, but it's not.
Yeah.
Stressing me out and making me trip. So I played the highest level of soccer that you can play in the United States, traveled the whole world playing soccer, played academy level for Earthquakes team in Fresno. And so we traveled all over, and so I learned a lot about discipline, man, and I learned a lot on the road. So one thing that was really interesting was my dad, although he wasn't a business owner, I was driving to and from for practice 3-4 times a week. I'd be driving either anywhere between 1 to 3 hours away for practice there and 1 to 3 hours home. And so along that way, my dad ended up running the soccer club. And so I would listen to him talk on the phone with people all the time, like literally all the time. And so I've always been outgoing. I've always been social, and I was really, really small. So I didn't have much going for me size-wise, but what I could do is I had the gift of gab. I could shoot the shit. I could, in bad situations, I could hurt people with my words. And so, you're
salesman, right?
Natural salesman. Yeah. So, and I learned a lot doing that. But no, I never felt like, I didn't feel like too different. I knew that I wasn't meant to live in Central California my whole life. I wanted to live by the beach. My energy's completely shifted living by the beach. But in high school, I went through it. I had a good group of friends. Absolutely loved. I enjoyed high school. I got bullied a lot when I was, those early years, because I was like literally 4'11", 5 foot, and maybe like 90 pounds. Yeah. So it is what it is. But
there's a funny. I was watching. There's a funny, like, all these studies that have come out on, like, what's the right amount of resilience that you have to build to be an entrepreneur, right? There's like a spectrum, and the guy he was on Joe Rogan's show, and he was a CIA guy, and he was talking about if you have a childhood where you have to build resilience, but not enough trauma where you're getting addicted to drugs and pornography and all that kind of stuff, but just enough resilience. So you do have some childhood trauma, like you're talking about right now, where you're smaller, right? When you're smaller, naturally you have to find a way to, all the just what rappers talk about, standing on their wall. Yeah. Right? But when you're younger, man, it's either sports, you learn how to talk, you learn how to use your words, and so that's fascinating to me. I always ask these questions because I like to know, like how that resilience was built, because you have to have it. Everyone gets punched in the gut all the time. No matter how much money you make, how successful you are, running companies, more days than not, you get punched in the gut. Totally. You run Airbnbs, you're getting a call about your property. Like, I have a buddy that runs one, shit's getting thrown over the fence at his property. Right. So I think it's great that you brought up how you built resilience. But I want to move into kind of one of the most important timelines in an entrepreneur's life that I think, if they're born an entrepreneur, I believe entrepreneurs are born, not created. Right. 100%. You take a guy that's a little bit different from what society says. They think outside the box a little bit. You give them some resiliency in childhood. But the biggest decision everyone makes between high school and college is, what do you do? Do I go to college or not? Do I go to college? It was a huge decision for me. It wasn't for most kids. Everyone's like, I go to college, that's what I do next. For me, I was like, what am I doing there? What am I getting out of it? How am I spending my time? What else can I do? And so that period for you, was it an easy decision to go to college? Was it something you thought about? Or was it just kind of your parents expected you of it? Or for you, was it like, okay, even if I don't use it, I just want to go have fun for 4 years? What was the thought process there for you? Yeah,
there was never a doubt in my mind that I was going to go to college or not. My whole goal with playing soccer was to go play college soccer. It was instilled in my brain that you go to college, you get a college degree. I wanted to get a master's degree. Yep. I'll be honest with you, I cheated my way through high school. I cheated my way through college. I wasn't paying attention in class, but...
Doesn't matter now with ChatGPT.
It doesn't matter. Like, to me, it doesn't really matter. I recommend, college to anybody, because truthfully, I met my best friends in my life. I met my, at the time, ex-girlfriend, and absolutely had an amazing time with her and all that stuff. But college was a very interesting period because, I was sheltered. I was really sheltered. And so I went to college to play soccer. Within the first 2 weeks, I quit, because I was like, screw it. I want to party. My roommates, I want to smoke pot. Like, I was opened up to this whole new world where in high school, I wasn't doing any of that stuff. I was an athlete, and I was like determined to go play. I was burnt out. I had started making new friends, and I was like, this is what it's all about. Social, party, this, that. And then it came a time where I got really sick. So this was like, I basically, once I started doing all the, stupid shit that a lot of people do, and I'm not afraid to talk about it, because like a lot of people are like, oh, you hear this typical entrepreneur story. I would go to parties and I would just stay in while everybody would stay out. I'm like, no, I was going out, dude. Like, I'm not gonna, bullshit. There's pictures of me going out and stuff.
That's I think that's the take on the internet, because people want to seem like they have this insane work ethic. But most of the guys I know that have built big companies, man, they're like, yeah, fuck yeah, I had my fun.
And I'll just keep it a buck. But then what really was a major catalyst to my life was my freshman, sophomore year. I was still very underweight, undersized, almost prepubescent. And so something's going wrong. I'm getting migraines every single week, debilitating migraines, to the point where I'd have to have like a friend or somebody come like massage the temples of my head, because I'm like sitting there crying and throwing up. It was that bad. Jeez. I was regurgitating food all the time. I was underweight. I was undersized. We're like, what the hell's going on? So I started going to all these doctors over the course. I'd been going to some doctors, but I start ramping it up a little bit, and I'm like getting these diagnoses that just don't sound right. And they're trying to get me on steroids for the rest of my life. They're trying to get me on, you have this and that, and just like I'm going back. I'm like, really? Like, I'm going to be addicted to like have to take these drugs for the rest of my life. There has to be a better way. It got to the point where I'm starting to get hospitalized. So through the very crazy story, my aunt has stage 4 breast cancer at right around the same time. Maybe right around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Stage 4 breast cancer, I'd eaten clean my whole life. I never really took too many like drugs or anything like the over-the-counter stuff that they would give you. But it got to a point where, in the story, where she goes to a doctor to go do chemotherapy, and somebody in the doctor's office, total God thing, goes, I don't think you should do this. I think you should go see this doctor. He's right down the street. He's a naturopath doctor. Go check him out. So she goes, just like, thinking what it's got to be a sign from God.
Yeah.
And long story short, she does this whole natural treatment. She goes down to Mexico, juicing, high doses of vitamins, no chemotherapy, no radiation, and she's now been cancer free for over 10 years.
Incredible.
Or over 8 years or something like that. So once we found out about that, my mom was like, hey Blake, let's just go to a naturopath doctor and let's see what happens. Within like 20, 30 minutes, he's like, dude, this is what's wrong with you. Have you ever done a full blood panel test? No, I've never heard of one. He's like, dude, you got multiple autoimmune diseases. The main one being, they thought it was Crohn's for a while. You have celiac disease. You're allergic to all these different foods. This is where it's coming from. You have leaky gut. You have eosinophilic esophagitis. You have all these different things that I never would have known that I had. So I'm at this stage in my life where I'm the sickest I've ever been. I've been partying a bunch. I'm just at a low. I'm depressed, bro. And then, when this stuff starts to happen, he goes, I think you have a liver problem too, but we can't figure out what it is. All right, so now I'm like, okay, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to do anything. Let's go figure out this liver thing. So I go to the Cedars-Sinai in LA. They do a liver biopsy where they go in through I can't remember if they go through your back or through your rib cage.
Painful.
Very painful.
Yeah.
And they test the liver. And, I get a call and they say to come in, and it just sounds eerie. And so I remember I'm sitting there with my mom, and, he basically says, I don't want you guys to freak out. We're going to come up with a plan of action, but this is the disease that you have. I don't want you to go home and Google it. I want, your mom to kind of do the research. Don't be afraid, but this is a very serious disease. Okay. The first thing that I do, and I see my mom just like head down, like taking her glasses off, and she's weeping, man. And I'm just like, fuck, like what is good? I Google it when I get home. Essentially, I had, they're telling me I had a life expectancy of 10 years.
What was it?
It was this very rare liver disease that they don't see very often. I can't remember the acronym off the top of my head. At this point in my life, I pretty much start blurring things out. I know it sounds hard,
It's
like
trauma.
weird,
Yeah, no,
but it's
I know
traumatic,
what you mean. Yeah.
extremely traumatic.
Yeah.
I'd never experienced anything like this before. And so I went down into a deep, just very deep depression. I'm like, man, I'm going to die. There's no way around this. Like, what is life anymore? I start questioning things. And this is when this major inflection, like turning point in my life comes about. One of my buddies tells me to get a job, recommends, this is what happened. One of my buddies recommend that I go do this startup competition. It's my sophomore year of college. I'm like, dude, I don't want to go. I don't want to do any of this shit. I'm sitting in my room. I'm depressed, man. Like, I don't want to leave. And he signs me up for this thing. I just had this weird feeling to go, and I went and ended up taking second place in this competition. It was like a startup weekend, and they gave me a job there. And from that point forward, it became uber clear to me that whatever I was going to do on earth moving forward, whether it was 10 years or not, I needed to get healthy and change my lifestyle. I needed to double down on business and get back into business because it was the only thing that lit my soul on fire.
Yep.
Like business, starting businesses, being a creator, being in rooms with people, shaking hands, like coming up with ideas, spitballing, freestyling. That is my fucking zone. Like that is what I was put on earth, to do, was to create and to build. And so I found this newfound passion through that would have never happened if I didn't have this, these health problems happen to me. So I look at it as a blessing. Thank God over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, I started getting way more healthy, started going to more and more liver doctors. They come out and they're like, hey, it's definitely not what you were diagnosed with. It's something, and they still are kind of working on it, but it's not going to kill you. So it took this like moment of my life where a lot of people would look back on it, and it is a real true inflection point. I could have kept going down a dark hole and doing drugs and alcohol and hating my life. I flipped everything. I know it's a long story, but
No,
you know,
sure.
that was the culmination of like a couple years there. So then I didn't, you know, my parents didn't have a ton of money to, they did their best to support through college, but I started picking up odds and ends jobs to kind of pay for my ventures that I was trying to start. So I tried to start a couple clothing companies, a couple of app startups. All of them failed, none of them successful. But I was working at I was doing used car sales. Yeah, so I picked up a bunch of different jobs. I did used car salesman. I did cold calling for a real estate agent, which was a crazy learning experience. And then my last job before I started my big business was I was serving takeout food at a barbecue restaurant, Wood Ranch Barbecue and Grill. It's amazing barbecue. Yep. But you know, I did that, and then I ended up paying my way through my master's degree. Got my so I got my degree in international business and my master's in enterprise innovation and entrepreneurship, and I did that all in 5 years. And after that, I was a month after I graduated from my MBA, because that happened during COVID. I had my first like multi-million-dollar business.
Jeez, man, that's a lot to unpack there. I had a very similar story where I was 21. I was about 3 years into running my business. We had a big office, a big team, and we were just flipping houses and stuff in Washington. And I was driving home from my parents' cabin one day, which is up in the woods. I love it. It's like a resort kind of place. And had my first, I didn't know, I thought I was dying. It was a panic attack. And I went to the hospital, and that began a 3 to 4 week descent into pretty much being paralyzed. I couldn't see, like, pretty much nothing. Like, my body shut down on me. So my body was burning internally nonstop, pins and needles. Almost lost my vision, couldn't drive, constant ringing in my ears, constant headaches. I thought for all means I was dying. I couldn't work for longer than 30 minutes without like my body shutting down on me. Just crazy stuff. No doctors could figure it out. Went from one doctor to the next, spinal taps, brain MRIs, spinal MRIs, just a full invasive of my whole body.
And nobody can get down to the bottom.
3 years, no one could figure it out. And it kept getting worse and worse. And I moved down here. One of the reasons I moved to San Diego is actually just to hang out in the sun. My businesses were doing well, and hang out in the sun and kind of let my body recover from. But I don't know what it was, so I wasn't recovering. And then finally, about a year ago, actually a little over a year ago now, I go in. I finally meet this ER doctor, and he was like, "Cole, like, I'm not supposed to really be telling people this, but you know, you have every single symptom of Lyme disease. And you're from Washington, where there's not supposed to be Lyme disease, but you have every single symptom possible." And I was like, man, I'm in the woods a lot at my parents' cabin. And so I went and got tested, and just off the charts. Everything. And there's a bunch of co-infections too, but off the charts. And so I went on aggressive antibiotic therapy, which I don't like antibiotics. And that combined with a lot of other stuff, fine. And I was able to get slowly back to 70-80% pretty quickly. But I've been down the road of, you think you're dying, no one can give you answers. And for the same thing for me, man, I'm a believer. And there's at the beginning of the Bible, the first thing that happens is creation. And I found the same thing for me with my main motivation and purpose of life is to create stuff. It's not about the money. It's not about anything else other than giving people jobs and creating things. And that's what lights me up. So I feel very similar to you on that, man. But I want to move into and keep going down the path of where this is leading us, which was to your first venture, which was the Wise Guy, the stock trading, right?
Correct.
So how did we get into stocks? What was the venture into that? How did that span into what was, I think, one of the biggest Discord groups out there for any kind of consulting offer? And that led you also into the short form stuff and the content. Let's start with just the stocks. What got you into that? How did you get good at that? Kind of lead me down that path a little bit.
Yeah, so again, like being a young entrepreneur, my first time, I remember going to my mom to make a custodial account because Facebook was IPOing. And so we had this in 8th grade. It's funny. In 8th grade, I had this teacher named Mr. Elsenbrook, who I don't even know what the class was. I think it was the most random class ever. He would teach all these random things, right? But one of the things was a stock market competition. And I fell in love with stocks. I would go home in 8th grade every day after school and watch MSNBC. I'd go watch Bloomberg. I'd go watch just anything I could. Kramer screaming. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta go buy this stock, right? I didn't know what I didn't know, but I totally fell in love with this, like being able to. I liked gambling. I was always a gambler growing up, and so I liked the concept that it was this gambling. You know, you can win money, you can lose money, and you know, I started there. So throughout that time, I'd always been interested in the stock market and learning about the stock market. And then early on, very, very early, was into crypto, was using my computer to mine. This is back in high school. And so I've been in the space, and I was no expert by any means, though, to be honest with you. I just had been interested and had actively been investing and trading, like through college, I tried trading a little bit. I wasn't the best at it, but I was just very interested in it. So what happened was during COVID, I was getting to a point where I'm like, man, I need to build something. Like, we've been kicking it, and one of the things about COVID is, and I talk about this a lot, and I get a lot of flack for this opinion, but I promise you it's true. If you weren't able to take advantage of that opportunity during COVID to make money, then I don't know how many more opportunities like that you're ever going to get, because the way that I saw it actively the whole time, a lot of people were like afraid and the fear mongering and stay inside, and a lot of it is like everybody around me is afraid and like, let's just stay in, let's watch Tiger King, let's do this, let's do that. Cool, I'm all for going out to the park and throwing a frisbee and having a beer and doing whatever, but we're looking at the greatest, I was telling people, I'm like, this is the greatest opportunity of your life. What do you mean, Rocha? What I mean is the world is standing still. Every single person out there except for doctors does not have to work. So the playing field is level. Like, the playing field is right now is level, and there's opportunities being created like you've never seen before. So I'm living on a couch with like 5 or 6 friends, and we're kind of rotating couch, and then one buddy has a bed on the ground.
And you're living on a couch because you didn't have a ton of money at this time?
I had no money, bro.
No money, okay.
No money. And like, I put all of it into my master's degree because I didn't want to have a bunch of loans out. And so, and I liked it. I'm not saying it like I was homeless. Like, I kind of was digging it.
Yeah, I mean, you look back at that days and be like, oh, dude, I wish I would have enjoyed those way more, right?
My homie was living in his truck outside. Like, it was dope.
Yeah.
And we were surfing all the time, and it was just a different lifestyle. I'm not saying I was homeless. I was still paying rent, but we chopped it up to where 6 homies are living in a 2-3 bedroom, and that was it. So long story short, all these dudes come in one day. I just got laid off my job serving takeout food, and so did all of my buddies because we all worked at the same restaurant together. And they're like, dude, we're about to get a stimulus check, $1,400. What should we invest it in? How do we get rich?
It's stimmy.
And I'm like, dude, my heart sunk to my feet. I've never had a feeling like this ever before in my life, where I was like, light bulb going nuts. I go straight to my room, I grab my whiteboard, I draw 3 circles, and I wrote, I wish I had a picture of this still, I wrote the perfect shitstorm. And they're like, Rocha, come out. I'm like, no, like, I gotta get this on paper before I forget.
This is my Zuckerberg
dude,
moment.
It was my moment, dude. I mean, that day changed my life. I wrote stimulus check, social media, lockdown on the circles. And then in the middle, I was like, me. I didn't know, I didn't have a personal TikTok, I didn't have a personal Instagram. All that I had was like a Snapchat. I didn't have a Twitter, but I'd always understood marketing. I understand marketing. Like, if there's one, I honestly would put myself on the, light brag here. I think I'm as good at marketing as anybody in the world. I would put myself in the top 3 marketers in the world. I would say maybe like a Gary Vee. I could compete with him.
I mean, you've created insane brand on low volume. On the sense of like, you're not the Pineda is putting out 4 things a day. Like, you put out crafted, purposeful stuff.
Everything that I've done is intentional. Yeah. And I'm just saying this because I started to build a brand around this. So here's what started to happen. A buddy of mine calls me. I don't know how long I should make this story, but this is a fucked up story.
Oh, you got time. You're good.
Okay, so a buddy of mine calls me after I kind of been talking to him. I'm like, dude, what do we do with this stock stuff? Because I know about it. You know about stocks. There's a lot of people that are interested in stocks. Stimulus checks are coming out. Like, how do we build something around this? And he goes, I have an idea. Let's build a Discord. I've been building businesses with my buddy since the Xbox Live days, right? This is my best friend since we were playing Modern Warfare 2, quick scoping fools on Afghan. And so then he's like, dude, let's do a Discord. I'm like, the gaming app Discord? He's like, yeah, man, you can build a community on there, and we'll just try and get people in. We'll charge $20 a month and whatever. We'll figure it out. So, dude, we spent that whole week building out this Discord. Nobody else had really been doing this. There was a couple of Discords out there, but nobody was doing it to this like massive level yet. And so the catalyst ends up being social media. But what happened was, how I got the name Mr. 4 to 8. People are always like, dude, where'd you get Mr. 4 to 8 from? I saw this guy on this stock forum because we would have to go do guerrilla marketing and one by one tell people, hey, come join our community. We had no social presence. So this guy on there's like, nah, man, like I'm staring at the screens all day long, like from market open to market close. I'm Mr. 4 to 8. Or like I'm Mr. 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. And I was like, oh, that's genius. I'm Mr. 4 to 8. Like, I'm going to take it from you. So I took the name. It stuck. I put this picture of Tony Soprano up because I didn't want my initial thought was, You know, for 2 years, I built millions of followers and built multi-million-dollar companies, 2 of them, without anybody knowing who I was.
Yeah.
Under this online moniker, Mr. 4 to 8. How does that work? Eventually, people start to put you on this like Batman type of role. They kind of have this idea of who you are in their head, and it works. There's some mystifying aspects to that. So long story short, another buddy of ours was, and one of our Egyptian friends is like, dude, I've been on Egyptian TikTok all day. Like, I'm going viral doing Egyptian comedy. I'm like, what the hell is Egyptian comedy? Number one. And number two, like, let me try TikTok. I make one video, wake up to 700,000 views.
Sheesh.
700,000 views. And it was literally me reading a Yahoo article called Best Penny Stocks to Buy. And from that point forward, I was like, this game is mine. I'm going to fucking dominate, because nobody else, I was the first person on TikTok, you know, check the receipts, check the stamps, the first person to blow up talking about stocks and investing. And I blew it up. I created 2 or 3 videos that were like, welcome to Stock TikTok. Some of my most viral videos ever. People that were there that time, like, they will remember those videos. So it was like, you know, I'm getting these all of a sudden. I was understanding, okay, here's how we drive traffic. Like, how do we build a true business around this? We were maybe making like $4,000 or $5,000 a month. I'm like, how do we get to $30,000 a month? How do we get to $100,000 a month doing this business? And so what happened with the online Discord is, I was sharing my thoughts and ideas, and, you know, but I was also connected. I would also go hire people that were great, you know, better traders than me, to be in the community sharing their ideas. Yep. Hey, I like this. Hey, I like that. Yep. And all I had to go do now is go. I had the idea. I just need to go find the market fit.
The blueprint.
And so, yeah, exactly. And so what I started doing was just structuring my videos in this way. I still structure my videos this way today. People can steal it if they want. But what I did was, I had a really strong hook in the beginning. Nobody else was doing crazy hooks like this. I had a really strong hook, like, we just had the greatest day in stock market history. Okay, now you got to stay. Like, what do you mean you have the greatest day in stock market history? Then I would go into, you know, hey, I was looking at this stock. I sent it out to my community. It went absolutely nuclear.
Story, right?
And story. Yeah. Then you followed up with testimonial of a student saying that they made X amount of dollars today. Followed up with a call to action. Hey, if you're ready to learn how to build wealth in trading stocks, hit the link in my bio and let's get rich together. I did this. People can't even build 400,000 person email lists in a lifetime. I had a 400,000 person email list and 150,000 person Discord within, you know, just a couple of months. But so with this original business, it was called Stock VIP. It was with my partner. It got to a point where we were butting heads. I had a long-term vision. He had a short-term vision. I was doing the social media. He wasn't doing any of it. And he calls me one day and he's like, hey man, this needs to be 60-40, because remember I gave you the idea of a Discord? I'm like, are you kidding me, man? And so I spent a lot of like sleepless nights worrying about this business and growing this business, I'm spending 18 to 20 hours a day. My girlfriend was not talking to me. My parents don't talk to me. I was living at my parents' house doing this, right? So I had to move back in with my parents during COVID, and we end up, you know, butting heads over and over. Long story short, he wants to bring in another partner for no reason, giving up equity. I'm sitting and I'm crying, dude, at night, because we were best friends, and now all of a sudden this business is making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, and we're just like, we're butting heads. And so I wake up to a letter from a lawyer one day, man, that's basically like, hey, you don't own this business. It's now a single member LLC. Because we didn't have an LLC figured out yet. It's a single member LLC. You are only going to be getting $15,000 per month, which I know it sounds like a lot, but it's not when you're originally think you're going to make $300,000 a month.
Yeah. And you pour your heart and soul.
And I poured my heart and soul into it, and I built it. It's all the audience is from me. It's my audience. Essentially, it is my business.
And is that still running to this day?
It's still running this day. It went on and did like $15 million. And I had to step away. So I had 2 options at this point in my life. I hadn't even made that much money from it yet, because we were only a couple months in. You know, we went from overnight as an overnight success. Yeah. So I had 2 options. Do I go sue my best friend? And you know, go sue my best friend, or do I start something new? And that's when I started Wise Guy. I started Wise Guy. And for about a year and a half, dude, I literally was just operating that business out of hatred for my old partner. And it blew up. It was another success. It was another went on and did 8 figures. Or no, it did close to 8 figures, and it still operates to this day.
Just in the background.
It was an amazing business for me, and it still is great. But I was trading my time for money, and so this is how I got into, you know, we could talk about real estate, but it wasn't my passion anymore because I was just doing nothing different than when I had to go clock into my shift at work. I had to wake up at 4 a.m. to trade. Then I had to make content all day. Then I had to go, try and maybe fit the gym in, then come back and do more content, go to sleep, and I'm dead. My relationships are being ruined. All this shit's being ruined for what? To make money for what? So my goal was always to get into real estate. I'd always been interested in real estate. And so I just began investing in real estate. And that's when my life truthfully dramatically changed even more from that, because I bought my time back. And that's kind of, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good segue into a couple of topics. I mean, the first one I think is that I talk about a lot is like quick money versus like building wealth, right? Because groups like this, online stuff, a lot of it's quick money, right?
Comes and goes.
It comes and goes, like everything in business, it comes in waves, right? So you have months where you crush it, months where you don't. But you segued into real estate perfectly. Why did you choose Airbnb out of all the different ways to get into real estate? What was that intro for you like? Did you just go buy a house and Airbnb it? I know you're doing the arbitrage stuff, so you do the arbitrage. I think people are going to be interested about where you were at the moment you bought your first arbitrage, whatever you want to call it, and if as deep as you want to go. I mean, I know it's helpful for me, like talking about, did you have 300 grand in your bank already when you did your first
Right.
Airbnb, or did you have 5 grand? Like, where were you at in life where you made that decision? And even going to the psychology of where you weren't super confident in it, right? You're taking a leap into a new industry. So talk about all that stuff. And I like to ask the question as in, like, if I was in that position you were when you were starting, you're giving yourself advice, what does that look like?
Right. My story is a little unorthodox because I'd been successful in business, and so I did have money coming into it, and I didn't start in Airbnb. I started in Section 8 real estate investing. So I was buying Section 8 properties. My first properties that I bought were in North Carolina. I still have them till this day. And yeah, I started in single family and had a couple started buying single families, duplexes. And yeah, so I started with just single family investment properties. I was like, let's do long-term rentals.
It was Section 8.
Section 8, because I did my research, and I was very confident that in terms of long-term investment properties that I was going to make the biggest bang. I wanted the biggest cash
on the Section 8.
I just wanted the best.
The pencil's on paper, right?
Yeah, exactly, dude. So I wanted the most cash flow because at this point in my life now, I looked at it like this. I've made a grip of money. Think of like my situation, and this is what I tell a lot of people that have found a little bit of early success. I can relate to people that have not found success, and I help people all the time that are just getting started. But I was in this very unique position. I can't bullshit and be like, yeah, I just got out of the mud and I went and used other people's money to. No, I was a multimillionaire. Mm-hmm. Like literally, I had millions of dollars that I was ready to invest. But it's still scary, and it's a new industry, and I was not an expert, and I had no intentions of ever going on and coaching and talking about real estate stuff. I wanted to buy some cash flow. So I go buy these properties. They're making no money.
Real quick, let's go even more specific. So you started Section 8. How are you funding these Section 8 deals? Are you buying them cash, or are you getting loans on them?
No, getting loans. I was putting, at the time, interest rates were like 3.5%, 4%. I was having to pay 5.5% because I didn't have 2 years of tax returns to even show that I could. Yeah. So I had to go find creative financing.
Were you using like a commercial portfolio lender?
Yeah, commercial portfolio lender, jumbo fixed rate, 30-year loans. So
whatever you could get your hands on.
Literally anything, because I was getting 5.
You're self-employed. They don't care how much money you make.
Whatever. Like I was basically getting. To be honest with you, I was just showing them my bank statement.
Yeah.
And being like, hey,
bank statement, rental loans. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Showing them my social media. Yeah. Like, hey, look, I'm really doing what I'm doing. Yeah. Like, this is no bullshit. Please just fund me. So I'm having to pay. I used to trip. I'm like, man, everyone's getting 3.5%. I got to pay 5.5%. Shit. Now I'll give me 5.5%, bro. Yeah. Like, I'll take that shit back. But so that's how I was funding these deals, and I was working with a couple of different lenders. Some of the bigger pockets guys too were able to help me out. So yeah, that's kind of how that happened. But the problem was, I'm like, by the time I had scaled this got this portfolio to a good size, every single month it was a radiator, it was tenants burning houses down, it was meth labs, it was this, dude, it's a nightmare. And so luckily, I had a property manager, so I trained him, and I had mentors. The big thing to hear is that this is probably the best piece of advice that I can give, and I've never given this out, but truth be told, I would not be in this position I am today without this strategy that I used. What I did was I learned a high-income skill, which was I knew how to do social media, and I knew how to build out these online subscription businesses. So I went to the biggest and best real estate experts online that I could find, and I said, hey, I will build you out a subscription-based community that will make you millions of dollars, and I will show you how to start marketing yourself way better. All that I ask in return, let me do this for you for free. All that I ask in return is that you teach me the real estate game. So that's what I did, and it worked. They had this business that went on and did multiple 7 figures. I now knew how to, and I had all the connections in any state that I wanted in how to invest in every part of real estate. So I did single family, I did Section 8, I did this, I did that. And then one day I kind of was like, man, how can I need way more cash flow. If I'm
going to start dealing with meth addicts in my house.
How do I deal with like party addicts, right? Basically, like let's go do this Airbnb thing. And so I started by just buying my first Airbnb in Florida. So I don't own or I don't do business in, I stay in California, but I don't do any business. I have no operations here. Everything I do is North Carolina, Florida, and Tennessee. And so I started in Florida with these properties and my first property. And dude, it was making more money than a $3 million Section 8 portfolio. One house was cash flowing more per month than a $3 million Section 8 portfolio that was cash flowing maybe $6,000 after.
And this was 2021?
This is mid-2021.
Okay.
So
like prime COVID.
And so I was like, you know what? I started learning the game more, and the biggest thing for me was I was still cash flowing heavy from my other businesses, and this is like into the weeds, but a lot of people need to understand, yes, the arbitrage thing is great, and I ended up doing arbitrage almost to kind of just do like case studies because I didn't need to go do arbitrage at all.
You started by owning that.
I started by owning, and then I did
arbitrage after.
Arbitrage so that I could teach my family and friends originally just like how to get into air, because they're like, hey man, we only have $15,000.
Yeah.
I'm like, look, this arbitrage game is very simple. Let me like break it down for you. I'm gonna show you how to do it. And then I started talking about it online, and it went nuts. Like nobody cared about. They pushed me into Airbnb, teaching about it because at the time I had already had a couple of Airbnbs and I was doing the arbitrage thing just for friends and family. And they were the ones that pushed me online. They're like, dude, let's hear more about this. Fuck the stock market. All right, perfect. Because now it's a great segue for me to not have to be trading every single day. And I can really just start talking about this multi-million-dollar, this Airbnb portfolio I've been building. So that's what I did. And I fell in love with it, man. I fell in love with the whole business side of things. I fell in love with the fact that I could build a true family business. Like I retired my parents, and now they both work for the business. My mom does the bookkeeping and management with all the houses. My dad goes out and does any project management that we have to do. And so I basically am like 15 minutes a week managing my Airbnb business. And that's only just phone calls with my parents or just go kicking it over dinner. And it's amazing. I'm paying them double what they were making at their old job. Everybody's happy. It's a very seamless game. But what people need to understand about real estate investing is at any point, whether you're working a W-2, whether you're have a great 9-to-5, whether you're a multimillionaire, taxes bite you in the ass, right? So like my whole life shaped my and you can jump in whenever you want.
No, keep going. It's meant for you to talk, so you're good.
So it's all of a sudden when the government tells you, hey, that $5 million you made, we want $2.5 million of it. I didn't care about taxes before when I had my mom doing TurboTax and my $32,000 every 2 years that I was making, right? Like I literally was making no money, so it didn't even matter. I was on EBT in college. Like, it just was what it was, right? So I didn't have to care about taxes. Now all of a sudden, they're trying to take my money. And so I start, doing the same thing again, sharing my skills, my knowledge with tax experts so that they could give me the best advice. And I knew that I needed to become a full-time real estate investor in the eyes of the IRS in order to take advantage of, and maximize my tax mitigation. And so I started doing tax planning, estate planning, trusts. And what I learned was buying real estate, more specifically buying Airbnbs, was one of the absolute best tax play in the world is buying short-term rentals. And there's a couple reasons. Number one, when you purchase the property, think of it like you're putting your 20% down into it or your 10% down into it or whatever you need to put down into it as a piggy bank. It's still your money. It's just tied up in the house. Now the house, ideally will appreciate over the next 5 to 10 years. So you're going to pick up that appreciation. And then you have these guests that are paying down your mortgage every single month and you're getting cash flow on top of it. So literally you have this asset that's producing cash flow every single month, and not in a little way, in a big way, in a multi-thousand to multi-10, 15, 20, $30,000 on some luxury properties. That's how big it can be. But on top of that, you're doing what's called a cost segregation analysis, where you are essentially forcing depreciation on these properties. You know about it probably a lot more than I do, but you're forcing depreciation on these properties and accelerating depreciation. Accelerating depreciation. And on the back of the napkin, what I've seen it work out to be is you're able to deduct about 20% of the purchase price when it's all said and done from your taxable income. So that's what it's turned out to be on a lot of my properties, about like 20% of the
Depends
purchase
on
price.
how much you have to do to that. And you're buying homes a lot of the time that are ready to be.
Yeah. If they're turnkey, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it's just been this amazing tool of mitigating my taxes, getting my tax bill down, and building equity, appreciation, and cash flow.
Yeah.
So
what's up, guys? Thanks for hanging out for the last 30, 45 minutes, however long it was with Blake and I. Pumped to bring you guys this show. We went deep into all kinds of different stuff. And this is a different format we're going to do. Probably going to do 1 or 2 of these a month on the boat here with amazing guests that have a lot to bring that I verify and make sure it's the real deal. So as always, wherever you listen to the show, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you like to listen, when you're on the treadmill, in the car, please give me a like or a subscribe. A share on your story, a DM means the world, you guys. I do listen to your feedback and make sure we're curating this to what you guys need to hear. So as always, like I always say, you're only one deal away.